Picture this. You work in finance and you get pulled into a video call. Your company's chief financial officer is there, so are a few colleagues you recognize. They ask you to move some money. It's urgent, it's a private deal, and you can see their faces and hear their voices. So you do it. 15 separate transfers, $25 million. And then you find out the truth. Every single person on that call was fake. This really happened at a global engineering firm called Arup in early 2024. Not one real human on that call, except the person being scammed. Now, here's the part that should make all of us sit up. When researchers showed 2,000 people a mix of real and fake videos and asked them to tell which was which, only 1 in 1,000 got it completely right. 1 in 1,000. And 60% of people were sure they could spot a fake. So most of us are confident we'd catch it, and almost none of us actually would. But here's the good news, and it's the whole reason for this video. A deepfake is not magic. It's a trick. And in the next few minutes, you're going to see exactly how the trick is done, how AI fakes a face, how it fakes a voice, and how to spot the seams and defend yourself. No hype, no doom, just how it works.
So let's start with the basics. What even is a deepfake? The word is just 2 words squished together: deep learning and fake. It was coined by an anonymous user online back in 2017, and all it means is synthetic media. A picture, a video, or an audio clip generated by AI to imitate a real specific person, saying or doing something they never did. Now, if you've watched our earlier videos, this is going to feel familiar. We've talked about how large language models work, how they're really giant pattern prediction machines, and we watch those models get hands and become agents. A deepfake is the same family of technology, just pointed at a new target. Instead of predicting the next word, it's learning the patterns of a face or the patterns of a voice and predicting those. That's the thread for today. Because to fake a person convincingly, you need 2 ingredients: a fake face and a fake voice. We're going to build both, one at a time. And then the important part, I'm going to show you why the real defense isn't your eyes at all. Let's start with the face. The original deepfake, the one the word was actually invented for, is a face swap. And the clever piece of machinery behind it is called an autoencoder. Sounds technical. It's really simple. Think of an autoencoder as 2 halves. The first half is an encoder. Its whole job is to look at a photo of a face and squeeze it down into a short list of numbers. Not the pixels, the essence. Things like the head is turned slightly left, the eyes are half closed, there's a smile about this wide, the light is coming from above. That compressed description has a name. It's called the latent. The second half is a decoder. And it does the opposite. It takes that little list of numbers and rebuilds a full face image from it. Now here's the trick. You train 1 shared encoder, but 2 separate decoders. One that only ever rebuilds person A, and one that only ever rebuilds person B. Because that single encoder has to describe both people, it's forced to learn a general idea of a face, a shared language of expressions that works for anyone. So to swap a face, you take a frame of person A, smiling, head turned left, run it through the encoder to get that description, and then you hand the description to the wrong decoder, person B's decoder. And out comes person B,
doing person A's exact expression and pose. The last step is just blending that new face back into the video frame. And for years, that blend is exactly where the trick fell apart. A faint seam along the jaw, where the fake face met the real head, with the lighting never quite matching. Hold on to that seam. It's gonna matter later.
Now, a face swap copies a real person, but AI can also invent a face from scratch, a photorealistic human who has never existed. And the method behind that is honestly one of my favorite ideas in all of machine learning. It's called a GAN, a generative adversarial network. Picture two AIs locked in a duel. The first one is a forger. Its job is to paint a fake face out of pure random noise. The second one is a detective. Its job is to look at a face and decide, is this a real photograph or one of the forger's fakes? At the start, the forger is terrible, and the detective catches it every time. But every round, they both learn. The forger gets better at fooling, the detective gets better at catching. Round after round, millions of times, an arms race sealed in a box. And when the forger finally makes faces the detective can no longer flag, you've got photorealism. There's a famous website that shows this off. Every time you refresh it, it generates a brand new human face in perfect detail. Someone who does not exist and never did. That's how you get fake profile photos and fake accounts that look completely real. And keep that forger versus detective idea in your back pocket, because that exact same duel, a fake maker against a fake catcher, is going to come right back when we talk about how we try to catch deepfakes. It's the whole reason this is such a hard problem.
So we've got autoencoders that swap faces and GANs that invent them. But around the mid-2020s, a third method took over. And it's the reason deepfakes suddenly got so much better. It's called diffusion. And the core idea is almost funny in how backwards it is. You take a real image and you slowly add random static to it. Noise, grain, until it's completely destroyed. Just TV snow. Then you train an AI to reverse that, step by step. Take the snow and unnoise it, a little at a time, back into a clean picture. Do that enough, and here's the payoff. You can start from pure static and have the model denoise its way into a face that was never there, sculpting a person out of noise, one pass at a time, steered by a prompt or a reference photo. Why does this matter so much? Two reasons. It produces finer, sharper detail than anything before it. And, crucially, modern diffusion can generate the whole video frame at once, with no blending step. Remember that seam along the jaw, our best tell for years? Diffusion erases it. There's no seam because nothing was pasted in. And that's not all. There's lip sync, where an AI drives just the mouth of a target face from an audio track so a person appears to say whatever you feed it. There's reenactment, puppetry, where your own head movements and expressions drive someone else's face like a marionette. And the newest leap is speed. These pipelines now run fast enough to work live, in real time on a video call, which is exactly how a fake CFO showed up on that Arab call.
Okay, we've faked the face. Now for the second ingredient, the voice. And the modern approach here is beautifully simple once you see it. To clone a voice, you split the problem into two questions. What is being said, the actual words, and who is saying it, the identity. Those get handled separately. The words are just text. The identity is the interesting part.
An AI listens to a sample of your voice and boils it down to a compact set of numbers that capture your vocal fingerprint, your pitch, your timbre, your rhythm, the little musical shape of how you talk. Think of it as a voice print. And this voice print model was trained on thousands of different speakers, so it's really good at its one job. Hear a new voice and instantly capture what makes it that voice. No retraining needed. Then a text-to-speech system takes your words, plus that voice print, and speaks the words in the target's voice. Here's the part that lands. Back in 2023, Microsoft showed a system that could do this from about 3 seconds of audio. 3 seconds! Today's tools want more like 30 seconds to a minute for something really convincing, but think about how little that is. A voicemail greeting, a few seconds of a birthday video, a clip from a podcast. That's now enough raw material to make a usable copy of someone's voice. And here's where I have to be honest with you, because it matters. This is the same family of technology as ordinary AI narration, film dubbing, audiobooks, the works. In fact, the very voice you're listening to right now is AI. Same underlying tech. So what separates a helpful tool from a weapon? It isn't the code. The code is identical. The line is consent and disclosure. Whether the person agreed and whether you're being told. Hold on to that one. It's the most important idea in this whole video.
So now let's put the two halves together, because that's where it gets powerful. Take a cloned face, add lip sync driven by a cloned voice, and you've built a full talking head, a person who looks and sounds real, saying words they never said. Run it as a pre-recorded clip, and you've got a fake announcement. Run it live in real time, and you've got the thing that fooled a Roop, an executive on a video call asking you to move money right now. Quietly. And this is why these scams work on smart, careful people. A live video call feels like the ultimate proof. I can see you. I can hear you. We're taught our whole lives that that's how you know someone is real. The scam weaponizes exactly that instinct. This same trick shows up in your personal life too. The frantic phone call from a family member who's in trouble and needs money immediately, in a voice that sounds exactly like them. Same mechanism, a copied voice plus urgency. And remember that number, only 1 in 1,000 people can reliably tell. So if your defense is your own eyes and ears, the odds are just not in your favor. Which brings us to the question you're really here for. How do you actually spot one?
Let's start by killing the advice you've probably heard. You've maybe been told deepfakes can't blink. Look for someone who doesn't blink. Here's the thing, that was genuinely true. Around 2018, early fakes were trained mostly on photos, where people's eyes are open, so the fakes forgot to blink. Detectors used it. And then, the people making deepfakes simply retrained their models to blink naturally. Problem solved. For them. So today, that tip is useless. And that little story is the whole game in miniature. Every visual tell works exactly like this. The weird waxy hands, the garbled teeth, the seam at the jaw. Each one was real. And each one got trained away the moment it was named. Any single visual clue is a moving target. So what about the detectors? The AI tools built to catch AI? They're real, and they're clever. Some look for a heartbeat, literally tiny color shifts in the skin as your blood pulses, which a real face has, and many fakes don't reproduce. Others hunt for flicker between frames, or the fingerprint a particular generator leaves behind. In the lab, the good ones hit 90–95%. But here's the honest catch.
On messy, compressed real-world video, that can fall to 70 or 80. And against a brand new generator they've never seen, they slip further. Remember the forger versus the detective? Detection is that same arms race forever. A useful layer, never a guarantee. So if your eyes fail and the detectors are always playing catch-up, what actually protects you? Behavior. And this part you can use today. 1. Verify on a second channel. If your boss video calls asking for money, hang up and call back on a number you already know. 2. Have a code word with your family and with your finance team. A car maker, Ferrari, dodged a voice clone scam last year because one executive asked the fake a question only the real CEO could answer. 3. Slow the urgency down. These attacks run on panic and authority. A mandatory pause, a callback, a second sign-off defeats almost all of them.
But behavior protects you on a phone call. What about the whole internet? The flood of videos where you'll never get to call anyone back. This is where the real fix comes in, and it's a genuine shift in thinking. Detection asks a losing question. Does this look fake? There are infinite ways to make something look real, so you're always one step behind. Provenance flips it around. Instead of trying to prove what's fake, we prove what's real by signing and labeling media the moment it's created. There are 2 pieces to it. The first is called content credentials, a standard known as C2PA, backed by a coalition of over 6,000 companies, from camera makers to Adobe to Google to the BBC. Think of it as a tamper-evident nutrition label attached to a file. It records what device or model made this and how it was edited, all cryptographically signed, so you can't fake the label. The catch? It's metadata, and most social platforms strip it off the moment you upload. The second piece plugs that hole. Google's SynthID bakes an invisible watermark right into the pixels or the audio itself. Not a sticker on the outside, but a pattern woven through the content, so it survives screenshots and re-uploads. Over 100 billion files have been marked this way. And this past May, something important happened. OpenAI and Google agreed to combine both approaches. The signed label for a rich history, the invisible watermark for durability. This kind of verification is rolling into web browsers, into search, into phone cameras that sign your videos as you shoot them. Now, it is not a solved problem. Watermarks can be attacked, and platforms still need to stop stripping labels. But this is the honest, hopeful direction. Instead of chasing every fake, we build a way to prove what's real. We're building the referees for the arms race. So where does that leave us? Let's be clear-eyed, without the doom. The money at stake is real. One analysis projects AI-enabled fraud in the US rising to as much as $40 billion by 2027. And there are darker uses that are the reason new laws exist at all. Fake intimate imagery made without consent, and disinformation designed to make you doubt real footage. Those are serious harms, and I'm not going to detail them. The point is simply that they're why governments are finally acting. But here's the balance the headlines skip. This exact same technology does real good. It dubs films into dozens of languages in the original actor's own voice. It gives people who've lost their voice to illness, to something like ALS, the ability to speak again in a voice that actually sounds like them. It powers accessibility tools and translation, and yes, honest, disclosed narration, like this one. The technology is neutral. Consent and disclosure are the line, and the rules are catching up. In Europe, a law taking effect on August 2nd, 2026 requires that AI-generated media be disclosed and machine-readably labeled. In the US, a new federal law targets non-consensual imagery,
and 46 states now have deepfake laws of their own. So here's where you've landed. You now know how a face is faked. Autoencoders, GANs, diffusion, how a voice is cloned from seconds of audio, why your eyes will fail you, and what actually won't. Verifying on a second channel, a code word, and provenance. Only 1 in 1,000 people can spot a deepfake on site. But spotting it on site was never really the skill. Understanding the trick is. And you just did. That puts you in a genuinely tiny minority. If this is your kind of thing, the wires behind the headlines, subscribe and stick around. There's a lot more of how it works to get into. No hype, no doom, just how it works. See you in the next one.